Passion of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to Matthew. Jesus went with his disciples to the olive grove called Gethsemane.
Sit here while I go over there to pray.
He took Peter and Zebedee's two sons, James and John, and he became anguished and distressed. He told them,
My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me.
He went on a little further, bowed with his face to the ground, praying,
My Father, if it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine.
Then he returned to the disciples, and finding them asleep, he said,
Couldn't you watch with me even 1 hour? Keep watch and pray, so that you will not give in to temptation. For the spirit is willing, but the body is weak.
Then Jesus left a second time and prayed.
My Father, if this cup cannot be taken away unless I drink it, your will be done.
When he returned to them again, he found them sleeping, for they couldn't keep their eyes open. So he went to pray a third time, saying the same things again. Then he came to his disciples and said,
Go ahead and sleep. Have your rest. But look, the time has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Up, let's be going. Look, my betrayer is here.
Even as Jesus said this, Judas, one of the 12 disciples, arrived with a crowd of armed men with swords and clubs. They had been sent by the leading priests and elders of the people. The traitor Judas had given them a prearranged signal. You will know which one to arrest when I greet him with a kiss. So Judas came straight to Jesus, kissed him, and exclaimed, Greetings, Rabbi.
My friend, go ahead and do what you have come for.
Then the others grabbed Jesus and arrested him. But one of the disciples pulled out his sword and struck the high priest's slaves, slashing off his ear.
Put away your sword. Those who use the sword will die by the sword. Don't you realize that I could ask my Father for thousands of angels to protect us, and he would send them instantly? But if I did, how would the scriptures be fulfilled that describe what must happen now?
Then Jesus said to the crowd,
Am I some dangerous revolutionary that you come with sword and clubs to arrest me? Why didn't you arrest me in the temple? I was there teaching every day. But this is all happening to fulfill the words of the prophets as recorded in the scriptures.
At that point, all the disciples deserted him and fled. Then the people who had arrested Jesus led him to the home of Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of religious law and the elders had gathered. Meanwhile, Peter followed him at a distance and came to the high priest's courtyard. He went in and sat with the guards and waited to see how it would all end. Inside, the leading priest and the entire high council were trying to find witnesses who would lie about Jesus so they could put him to death. But even though they found many who agreed to give false witness, they could not use anyone's testimony. Finally, 2 men came forward who declared,
This man said, I'm able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days.
Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus,
Well, aren't you going to answer these charges? What do you have to say for yourself?
But Jesus remained silent. Then the high priest said to him,
I demand in the name of the living God, tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God.
You have said it. In the future, you will see the Son of Man seated in the place of power at God's right hand and coming on the clouds of heaven.
Then the high priest tore his clothing to show his horror and said,
Blasphemy! Why do we need other witnesses? You have all heard this. Blasphemy. What is your verdict?
Guilty! He deserves to die!
Then they began to spit in Jesus' face and beat him with their fists. And some slapped him, jeering.
Prophesy to us, you Messiah. Who hit you that time?
Meanwhile, Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. a servant girl came over and said to him,
You are one of those with Jesus, the Galilean.
but Peter denied it in front of everyone.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Later, out by the gate, another servant girl noticed him and said to those standing around,
This man was with Jesus, the Galilean.
I don't even know the man.
A little later, some of the other bystanders came over and said,
You must be one. We can tell by your Galilean accent.
A curse on me if I'm lying. I don't know the man.
Immediately, the cock crowed. Suddenly, Jesus' words flashed through Peter's mind. Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times that you even know me. And he went away, weeping bitterly. Very early in the morning, the leading priests and the elders met again to lay plans for putting Jesus to death. Then they bound him, led him away, and took him to Pilate, the Roman governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, realized that Jesus had been condemned to die, he was filled with remorse. He took the 30 pieces of silver back to the leading priests and elders. I have sinned, for I have betrayed an innocent man.
What do we care? That's your problem.
Then Judas threw the silver coins down in the temple and went out and hanged himself. The leading priest picked up the coins.
It wouldn't be right to put this money in the temple's treasury, since it was payment for murder.
After some discussion, they finally decided to buy the potter's field and make it a cemetery for foreigners. That is why the field is still called the Field of Blood. This fulfilled the prophecy of Jeremiah that says, they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price at which he was valued by the people of Israel, and purchased the potter's field, as the Lord directed. Now Jesus was standing before Pilate, the Roman governor.
Are you the king of the Jews?
You have said it.
But when the leading priests and the elders made their accusations against him, Jesus remained silent.
Don't you hear all these charges they are bringing against you?
But Jesus made no response to any of the charges, much to the governor's surprise. Now it was the governor's custom each year during the Passover celebration to release one prisoner to the crowd, anyone they wanted. This year there was a notorious prisoner, a man named Barabbas. As the crowds gathered before Pilate's house that morning, he asked them,
Which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Messiah?
He knew very well that the religious leaders had arrested Jesus out of anger. Just then, as Pilate was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent him a message. Leave that innocent man alone. I have suffered through a terrible nightmare about him last night. Meanwhile, the leading priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas to be released and for Jesus to be put to death. So Pilate asked again,
Which of these 2 do you want me to release to you?
Barabbas!
Then what should I do with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?
Crucify him!
Why? What crime has he committed?
but the mob roared even louder.
Crucify him!
Pilate saw that he wasn't getting anywhere and that a riot was developing. So he sent for a bowl of water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying,
I am innocent of this man's blood. The responsibility is yours.
We will take responsibility for his death, we and our children.
So Pilate released Barabbas to them. He ordered Jesus flogged with a lead-tipped whip, then turned him over to the Roman soldiers to be crucified. Some of the governor's soldiers took Jesus into their headquarters and called out the entire regiment. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. They wove thorn branches into a crown and put it on his head, and they placed a reed stick in his hand as a scepter. Then they knelt before him in mockery and taunted.
Hail, King of the Jews!
They spit on him and grabbed the stick and struck him on the head with it. When they were finally tired of mocking him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on again. Then they led him away to be crucified. Along the way, they came across a man named Simon, who was from Cyrene, and the soldiers forced him to carry Jesus' cross. And they went to a place called Golgotha. Please stand. The soldiers gave him wine mixed with bitter gall But when he tasted it, he refused to drink it. After they had nailed him to the cross, the soldiers gambled for his clothes by throwing dice. Then they sat around and kept guard as he hung there. A sign was fastened to the cross above his head, announcing the charge against him. It read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Two criminals who were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. The people passing by shouted at you, shaking their heads in mockery.
Look at you now. You said you were going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Well then, if you're the Son of God, save yourself. Come down from the cross.
The leading priests, teachers of religious law, and elders also mocked Jesus.
He saved others, but he can't save himself. So he is the King of Israel, is he? Let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe in him. He trusted God, so let God rescue him now if he wants it. For he said, "I am the Son of God."
Even the criminals who were crucified with him ridiculed him in the same way. At noon, darkness fell across the whole land until 3 o'clock. At about 3 o'clock, Jesus called out in a loud voice,
Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani.
which means, my God, why have you abandoned me?" Some of the bystanders misunderstood and thought he was calling for the prophet Elijah. One of them ran and filled a sponge with sour wine, pulling it up to him on a reed stick so he could drink. But the rest said,
Wait, let's see whether Elijah comes to save him.
Then Jesus shouted out again, and he released his spirit. At that moment, the curtain in the sanctuary of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, rocks split apart, and tombs opened. The bodies of many godly men and women who had died were raised from the dead. They left the cemetery after Jesus' resurrection, went into the holy city of Jerusalem, and appeared to many people. So the centurion and the other soldiers at the crucifixion were terrified by the earthquake and all that had happened. The centurion said,
This man truly was the Son of God.
"Hear him."